Hi, I'm Victor, the main organizer of the Full Stack Flutter conference. On this channel we publish the best talks from the conference every week throughout the year, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. I'm also the founder of ServerPod, so if you want to build your backend in Dart, make sure to check that out too. Divyanshu Bhargava is leading the mobile engineering at Securency. He's a Google developer expert in Flutter and Dart and an organizer of Flutter Abu Dhabi and Dubai. He will talk about server-driven UIs with Mirai. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome to my talk Scaling Server-Driven UI with Mirai. I'm Divyanshu Bhargava, and today we're going to see how Mirai will do magic with our apps. So before we move forward, a bit about me. I'm a mobile lead at DTCC Digital Assets. I'm based out in Abu Dhabi, UAE. I'm also a Google developer expert for Flutter and Dart. I'm running an amazing Flutter Abu Dhabi and Dubai community here. And a fun fact about me is I'm a big coffee addict. So I always say this, more the coffee, more the code, better the coffee, better the code. So before we move forward, I would like you to take on a journey of a brief history of apps. So apps have been there since 2008, since the time of AppStore and the PlayStore were first launched, until today in 2024, uh, where we have more than 3 million apps on Play Store and more than 2 million apps on App Store. But in this time frame, it's not only the number of apps which have changed, apps have become much more dynamic, much more personalized, and much more smart. And all of that was possible because of some great tools like Dart and Flutter, which help us build cross-platform application so easily, and some amazing tools for backend like Firebase and Serverpod. And then there are some new emerging tools like Gemini or ChatGPT, which are changing the way how apps will be used in future. But one thing never changed. That is how we develop and publish our apps. That is the traditional way of building apps, which is the client-driven UI. So what is client-driven UI? Basically, in client-driven UI, your presentation logic resides inside the client. What does it mean? Is that your client app knows exactly how many screens are gonna be there, which screens have what widget, what data to be rendered, and etc. So what's the problem with the current system? Well, the major thing is slow app updates. So we design, develop, QA test, and then we wait for the App Store reviews and the Play Store reviews, which can take from days to even weeks to get approved. And even that, even though it get approved, user might take from another days to weeks and even sometimes forever to update the apps. Uh, and then we have something like platform specific development. So Flutter do help us in building apps for different platforms. But when it comes to deployment, we need to deploy it to Android, iOS, and web. And what happens is, let's say your Android app got deployed, but iOS is still taking time for the review or it got rejected. So your iOS users are like far behind than the Android user in this case, and which could lead to inconsistency in your user base, and which also leads to very high time to market. So what features and apps you could have launched in weeks might take months to launch. And this is very crucial for startups and companies which want to move faster with the new features and updates and changes. Uh, but it becomes very difficult with the current scenario. And not only that, we have limited A/B testing. So you cannot test different features with different user base so easily, or you cannot personalize your app for different user base. So for example, I would like to have my users in US a different UI or different onboarding flow, and maybe users in Europe or India or UAE have a different user flow. And imagine if there is any security risk and you are not able to update the app or not able to update the APIs. Well, that's a big issue because your users are not updating the app, and until unless they don't update the app, they are prone to the risk. And finally, it's not easy to white label, not easy to theme better or change the theming of the app. And these are some of the problems out of many. Which brings us to a question like, what if the client is dumb? What if the client doesn't needs to know what it's rendering and just how to render the widgets? That's what brings us to server-driven UI. So server-driven UI is basically a way to build your to drive your UI from the server. So basically, server comes and tells what screen to render, in which screen, what components to show, what data to show, what theming you can have in your app, and all of that you could drive through the server. So let's take this screen which you were checking before, and before we're getting some API response from something like this, but instead what we'll get is a list of components or something like you'll get from the API. You'll get, hey, this is app bar. Then you have list of post, and at the bottom you have a button bar, and your response would look something like this, where your each widget have a type and the content to load into that widget. So there are major companies which are using server-driven UI, and some of them are like Dropbox, Airbnb, Spotify, Nubank, and so many more. So we are not alone in this. But building server-driven UI from scratch is hard. You need to have a wide variety of components and widget support in your design system. Managing dynamic routes and navigation is very tricky. Uh, Managing state between server and client gets really hard because some state will be stored in the client side and some has to be stored on the server. And then having consistency with server-driven UI components for the all platforms. And finally, managing server-driven UI data. So let's say if your data is stored in JSON, XML, or any other else, it's a bit hard to manage. To solve all these problems, I want you to introduce Mirai. So Mirai is a server-driven UI framework for Flutter. Mirai allows you to build beautiful cross-platform application with JSON in real time. If you're wondering where the word Mirai comes from, it's a Japanese word which means future. And Mirai has some great key features like real-time updates, JSON-driven configuration, open source. It's highly scalable and very developer-friendly. So how to get started with Mirai? So first is you just go to your Flutter project and just add Mirai through Flutter pub add Mirai, then import Mirai package and just initialize Mirai by calling await Mirai.initialize, and that's it. It's just three simple steps and you're good to go. So how do we use Mirai? So there are various ways to use Mirai. One of the easiest and simplest way is calling Mirai from JSON and passing your JSON data into it. uh, if you have JSON stored into your assets or local derived for example, you have stored some static JSONs for continuous usage, then you can call Mirai from assets. And my favorite one is Mirai from networks, where you can just pass the network URL of the your JSON data and just fetches and show your just show build your UI, and that's pretty amazing that how easy and how powerful it is. So how do you build this Mirai JSON? Well, it's very easy to build. It follows the same structure as Flutter. So for example, here you have type scaffold, you have an app bar, and which has a type app bar, and then you have a title which takes a widget, and it could be any widget. In this case, we are passing type text with data, styles, background colors, etc. It has a lot of widget support. So from container, text, row, column, and many more. So here is a demo project which I've created. You can see I have integrated Firebase in it. So to use Mirai, what I've done is just added Mirai to my pubspec.yaml. Uh, so it has latest version, which is 0.7.0. And going back to my main.dart, I just imported Mirai package, initialized Mirai. And here, once I get the data from my Firebase, I'm just using Mirai from JSON. Okay, let's see how does it look. So here is my Firebase real-time database, and here is the app which I'm running on my Pixel 6 device. So as you can see on the left side, here is my Mirai JSON, which has all the data for this screen. And then this is rendering this JSON into the Flutter app. And you can see it's a working Flutter app, and you can control a lot of things. So for example, here, I don't want to call it like get started. I can call it something like create, okay, create account. I can change the size, I can change the style, I can add the color. So uh, I'm really not good with color, so I just give a plain old boring red color. And you can see as I'm changing things, it changes instantaneously. So this is the JSON for text field of your name. So I can change maybe your name to your number. So let's say you don't want their name, you want their number, and you can see your hint text is changed. But not only that, you can control what kind of keyboard you want to show. So for example, I want to show a number keyboard. So when I go like change and go back to that field, it shows me a numeric keyboard. And this is like one of the few things you can control. There are so many things you can control, like how do you which widgets to show, which buttons to show, uh, what colors to have. And let's try changing the color of the screen. So let's say I don't want the background to be white, maybe something like uh, green or blue, or let's try blue. So uh, oh, this is green and this is blue. And you can see as soon as I click on change it, it changes it. And that's the beauty of when you use Firebase and Mirai together. Um, okay, now what if you think that, hey, Mirai has great widgets, but I want to build something of my own, or I have some custom widgets given by my designer. How do I build that with Mirai? Well, pretty easy. Mirai got it all covered. So Mirai has this custom parser support where you can build your own custom parsers and initialize it in Mirai. And let's see how do we do that. So for example, here is a screen given to me by my designer, and I have this graph. So let's say Mirai widget library doesn't have this graph feature. So what I'll do is I'll create a Mirai chart model. So here I'm using a freeze model class. So once I've created the model class where I've defined what all things I'll pass from the server, basically these are the things which you would like to control from the server. And then I'll create a class called Mirai chart parser and then extend Mirai parser, uh, defining the type of my model. And this Mirai parser gives you three functions to override. So first is the get model, which is a simple function where you just return your from JSON for your model. This basically gives you the model in your parse method, which you can use easily for all the data which is coming from the JSON. Second is your type. So type is very important. This is where it uniquely identifies your widget type in your app. And last is the parse method. So the parse method is all your widget code goes. So for any widget you want to build, you can build it. And the things which you want to control from the server, you just get the model values and just use that in your widgets. Pretty simple, right? Okay. And now once you are done with that, what you can do is go to your Mirai initialize and then initialize your parser, and that's it. And now you can use your Mirai JSON to build your Mirai chart app. That's amazing, right? Okay, now you must be wondering, that's great, Mirai can build great UIs with just JSON and I can update them on the fly. But what about the network or the navigation? Well, Mirai has something called Mirai Actions, which are like one of the amazing features. So Mirai Actions are basically an action that is called on a trigger, something like on press or on long press, on swipe, etc. And these can be defined with Mirai JSONs and configure it dynamically through the server. And let's see how Mirai action works. So Mirai provides different actions out there, something like navigation, network calls, showing dialogues, bottom sheet, or you can define something, anything which you like. Okay, so Mirai has something great called Mirai Navigate Action, which allows you to control navigation through the server. Isn't that amazing? Let's see how does it work. So Mirai Navigate Action gives you different options to control, like network requests, or you can pass the asset path or the local route name. So how does it work is pretty simple. So let's take an example of this elevated button. It has an on press and it has an action type called navigate, and you're passing the asset path here. Now let's see Mirai navigation in action. So here is our create account screen with Mirai. And what we're gonna do is we'll uh, we'll find this elevated button first. So where is our elevated button? Uh, Here it is. So as we see in this elevated button, when I click on it, it will take me. So it has an action type called navigate, and it takes a request URL. And when I click on this, it will take me to a new screen. Well, isn't that great? And now I can change this navigation on the fly by just changing the path. So for example, from profile.json, I want to maybe go into like login.json. And when I click here, it takes me to a login screen. So that's great. Mirai can help you change your navigation dynamically through server. So another action which Mirai provides is Mirai network action. Mirai network action allows you to call any network API or any network request, and it's pretty easy. You just need to pass a URL. So an action type as network request, and you can pass a method, content type, body, etc. Just like with any other network request. Here we have a JSON for our elevated button from our login screen. In our elevated button, we have the we have an action type called network request, where it defines like what type, method, request it sends. So for example, here it's calling dummy JSON auth login with email and password. So let's try this. And when I click on it, it calls that API and it shows successful, or if in this case, let's say if I type a wrong password, hopefully it should show an error. That's great. And how does it work is I have defined a URL. I have defined the like other params, like what is the method type, action type, and all that. And let's see the result. So result is like once the API is called, and if my status code is 200, I call a alert dialog with data successful. And if it is status code is 400, I will call an alert dialog with text as error. So this is amazing how fine control Mirai gives you, and you can control from navigation to network call, like anything is possible. Now, you must be wondering, fine, but I want to call a custom action where you are storing something or doing something specific for your use case. Well, then we have something called Mirai custom actions. And this is very similar to what custom parsers are. So action parsers are similar to Mirai parsers, where you have an action type, you have a model, and instead of parse method, you have on-call method. And this is called when this action type would be called, and where you can define anything you want. So in this case, I'm like calling an open app settings. So I want to call an open app settings method from JSON. And isn't that amazing? So at last, I want to show you a great tool called Mirai AI. So imagine if you want to convert your Flutter code into the Mirai JSON, or you are lazy like me and you don't want to write your Mirai JSON because handling JSON is a bit of a tedious task. So here we are building a Mirai AI tool. Right now it's in private beta, but we'll be launching it soon. So what this Mirai AI tool does is either you can copy and paste your Flutter code and it converts into Mirai JSON, or you can give it a command. So for example, here I can ask it like create a sign in screen. Okay, here it is. After a while, our AI created a sign in screen for with Mirai JSON, and you can see all the JSON is generated by Mirai AI. And isn't it pretty amazing, right? Uh, and not only that, it understands the context pretty well. So I can say that, okay, now change change it to dark theme, and now it will just so it will understand the context that okay, it needs to have the same screen, and then it will convert it into the dark theme. So after some loading, here it is. So here it has created our sign-in screen into a dark theme screen, and it is pretty amazing that how it understands the context where when it's to modify the same screen or when it is has to create a new screen. Uh, Finally, as we discussed, Mirai has some great advantages like it updates features and on the go. You can have customizable layout, easy A/B testing, reusability of same templates multiple times, standardized UI across the platform, and white labeling is super easy. Uh, if you like to check out the repo, just scan this QR code or just go to github/ccurrencyOSS/Mirai. Uh, Finally, thank you so much for attending my talk. If you would like to reach out to me or connect with me, I go by Divyanshu B024 in most of the platforms. And thank you so much for attending this talk. Have a great day. Bye bye.